Hey guys, my name is Ishan and I'm a trading associate here at Menons. Today I'm joined by Sandeep, who is a policy analyst, and we want to speak to you a little bit about some of the steep movements we saw in the Indian financial markets today, both in the Nifty and the Sensex, and why we believe these movements may have been politically triggered. Midday today, we got news that a motion of no confidence had been accepted at the Lok Sabha by the current speaker, Ms. Sumitra Mahajan. We believe this was a fair cause of concern amongst retail investors in the country, and these led to some of the movements that we saw in the markets today. Going ahead, we're going to talk a little bit about the history of the no confidence motion in India and what essentially it could mean for us today.
Right, so a no confidence motion. Now, this has been attempted about 27 times, including today, in the short history of our democracy so far. And it's essentially a way of the opposition to try and tell the government in power that they don't believe they're actually suitable for the role, they don't believe they're actually suitable to rule over the country. And so they introduce a motion, and you need to have at least 50 members of the House who sign the motion, and then it gets accepted by the Speaker of the House. And once it gets accepted by the Speaker, it goes up for discussion in both the lower house and the upper house. And if a majority of the members of Parliament can agree that the government is in fact unsuitable and unfit to rule over, then they will be pushed out. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this has occurred 27 times in our history. Indira Gandhi, she holds a record for having received the most number of motions of no confidence, which was 15. And it really shouldn't surprise anyone given her poor record on democracy, especially during the emergency years. But it's only ever succeeded once, and that was in the case of Morarji Desai, I think in 1979 or 1980, right after Indira Gandhi was voted out after the emergency. And Morarji Desai, the only reason why it didn't work out for him is because he couldn't convince his own party members to remain on his side. So other than that, the vote of no confidence, it's merely just it's a symbolic way of the opposition to try and show the government that they really disapprove of their control and their rule. And Sonia Gandhi attempted the same thing back in 2003 when Vajpayee was the Prime Minister, about a year before the general elections back then. And it looks like she's using a similar tactic again today.
So, moving on from that, something we need to talk about is what is a no confidence motion and what could that mean for us? In India, a no confidence motion can only be passed in the Lok Sabha and not in the Rajya Sabha. And there's a very important reason for that. The way the political system works in our country, a government can only remain in power if it enjoys majority in the Lok Sabha. Now, periodically, it needs to show its strength in the Lok Sabha through these flow tests. Now, when a motion of no confidence is passed, the existing government, in our case the BJP or the Bharatiya Janata Party, must prove through getting a certain number of votes in the Lok Sabha itself that it still enjoys the confidence of the legislature. Now, whether or not this will end up happening is something we have to wait till Friday, because that is when the votes happen.
Right. Now, there was an anti-defection law passed not too long ago, which basically means that in the House of the Parliament, in the Lok Sabha, if the government or if a particular party issues a whip on all its party members, then all those party members must listen to the orders of their government. So in this particular case, and it is invariably going to happen, the head of the BJP or the heads of the BJP, people like Narendra Modi and Amit Shah, if they decide to tell the rest of their party to vote a particular way, then they will have to vote in that way. They can abstain from voting, but what that would mean is that they would essentially be giving up their role, giving up their profession as a member of parliament, and so the numbers in the House itself would be reduced. So the only way really that the BJP can be voted out is if most of their ministers decide to resign, and then somehow the remaining parties have a majority and they can vote the BJP out. But that's never going to happen. So there is no danger of the BJP leaving its role as the government of India. So, Ishan, given the fact that the no confidence motion almost never works, and we spoke about the anti-deflection laws and how it's unlikely to work in this situation as well, almost certain to not work, why do you think the opposition decided to go through with it?
Well, as far as the timing of it is concerned, there's really no specific reason. We see no confident motions being passed on the floor. As I said before, it is a very good flow test to make sure that at any moment in time the House still has the confidence of the legislature. But this, what we're seeing right now, might be something similar to what we saw back in 2003 when Sonia Gandhi had passed a motion of no confidence against the then Vajpayee administration, knowing full well that there was really no chance that it would pass, but because elections were coming up in 2004 and it was more a symbolic move than it was a political one, and given that elections are coming up again next year for us in India, and there have been more than one reason why a lot of people in India are upset with the current government, this might be more of a symbolic gesture for them to go through with it now. But what I keep coming back to, and what's something a lot of people may not understand, is why do you think the vote of no confidence or the no confidence motion still works when when each party has certain anti-defection laws in place? Does it even make sense to go through with it then?
Well, like we spoke about earlier in the video, I think the only way it could work is if the BJP ministers themselves decide to vote against their own party, in which case their vote won't be counted, they'll merely be removed from the parliament. So if you have a situation where 100 odd ministers decide to resign, and then you reduce the total number of members of parliament in the House itself, then there is a small chance that the opposition will be able to do it. So because of the anti-defection laws, it's not going to work. And like you said, it is a symbolic move. I think the Congress government and their allies are slowly chipping away at the BJP. They're trying to see how vulnerable they are. They're trying to see, okay, we've got less than a year to the next elections. We're going to try and impact them as much as we can and do as much damage as we can. And hopefully, like in 2003, because it sort of worked in that situation. Nobody thought the Congress would win in 2004, and it was a big surprise for everyone that the NDA government couldn't come back into power. So they have all sorts of tactics under their belts, and this is pretty much what they're doing again today.
Well, in conclusion, in India, whether or not political moves are symbolic, the effects that they have on the financial markets are very real. The effects they have on the minds of retail investors in the country are very real. And moving ahead, what we can definitely expect is an increase in volatility, since this does count as a political event that is affecting the markets. We've seen this before earlier this year in February when the budget came out, and the idea of taxing equities almost torpedoed investor sentiment. Whether or not this is something that will happen again, whether or not its impact on the markets is going to be more long lasting, and how exactly retail investors in this country will react to this situation is something we're going to have to wait and see.
Well, that's it for today. Thank you for watching. Please leave any comments or any feedback that you have, and share and like our videos. Thank you.
Thank you.